So, I've not been up and about today. I have a thing that I try to go by, especially at the moment, because I've been so poorly. But my, whatever you want to call it, what I live by is that I'm always out of pyjamas and dressed in the afternoons when Amelia Rose comes home from school, because I think for a child of a parent of chronic disease, seeing that element of a routine, then that becomes the norm. And as much as you never want them to, because you never want to see your children hurting or struggling or crying, but they know when you're very poorly. They know that what is going on is exceptional to what normally goes on. And the relationship that I have with Amelia Rose, we're very, very honest with each other. We have certain phrases, shall we say, that we only use at certain times because of the emotional enormity of them for us all as a family. And you're going to have to excuse my language now, because we're not big swearers. But the phrase, I can't remember to say this, the phrase that we use is, "This is really shit." No, this is shit. And sometimes there might be an F word in there. Parent of the year. Because what that does is that enables everybody in our family, I don't want to say the right, but the emotional okay to fall apart for a little while. And this is something actually that I get much more from my mum than I do from Tony when I'm very poorly. And I just want to explain that to everybody, because when I'm very poorly, when there are times when I'm in hospital, when there have been times when I was in hospital an hour away, every single day that I was in that hospital, whether that was 7 weeks or 6 weeks or 5 weeks or whatever, Tony would take Amelia Rose to school in the morning, come and spend the day with me in hospital, pick her up from school, bring her back to the hospital in the evening. They would then have their evening meal here, normally in the cafe. She'd then have a normal school week. And that, for a child who is living with extreme chronic disease, and obviously in Amelia's case now a parent with cancer as well, it needs to be okay for everybody to fall apart when they need to, and to be able to say how stressed they are, where they are emotionally, what they need from people, what support and love they need from people. So when I am very, very poorly and I'm in hospital for a very long time, if I'm honest, Tony isn't the person that hears all of those things that I need to say. He's not the person that hears, "Oh, I'm such a letdown, all I ever do is let everybody down, I'm not good enough, Amelia deserves better than me, I want to be at home, this isn't how it should have been." And there's one that I'm going to say, and it's one that I've personally always found particularly difficult, and it's something that really the only person that I've properly spoken to it about all the way through is my mum. And that little sort of saying is, I don't see myself as an old lady, and I find that really hard. I think we all have these wishes and hopes for our future, and I don't want mine to be that I'm in the corner of a council care home and my health, I don't have a life anymore. I don't, and obviously these are fears. They're fears of a young woman that probably sound ridiculous, but they are things that you go through, especially when you're very, very poorly. And the person that I talk to most about all of that side of everything is my mum. She's the one that I will cry with. She's the one that is sat with me until like 11 o'clock at night, midnight, because she's giving Tony some time to go and be at home, obviously with Amelia where he's needed, and she's like sat and watched my heart monitor, or she's sat and had to hear some very challenging conversations that no mother should have to process, I don't know a parent alive who doesn't feel enormous anxiety about the idea of their child going into hospital, no matter how old that child is. We're all somebody's little girl, little boy, daughter, son. And I think sometimes for families especially, chronic diseases like Ehlers Danlos Syndrome have such enormous impacts on families who are most likely already living enforced, and I'm not saying that they're enforcing on themselves, but enforced very chaotic lives because of pain and fatigue and appointments and all of those, that web of things, benefits, food banks, all of those things that are so important to a family being able to thrive during stress. It's just like, it's okay, this is how I'm going to describe it. It's like opening, see if you get it, see if you can, or if this is just going to make me sound like a crazy creative soul, which isn't a bad thing. But if you ripped open a bag of Skittles, you imagine that, taste the rainbow, and you just like threw it across the room, and then every Skittle on the floor was a part of this person's story, and you feel like you're the family member that dropped the ball, and in your mind, in your perception of things, you feel like you're the person that blocked the reason that the person didn't, get a diagnosis perhaps when they could have originally, that didn't always believe that person, that didn't always, wasn't always able to emotionally and mentally and process what was going on in the family, because it was so painful for everybody. Because what chronic disease does do to families and to parents and to people is it's like a tornado, and anybody that's ever seen a tornado or the aftermaths of a tornado or a hurricane, it is total devastation. And if you imagine having someone in your life that you love dearly and you witness that total devastation in their life, those are the conversations where everybody needs to be able to be really honest. The other thing that is, I think it's very difficult, and it's especially difficult for young people living with chronic diseases and diseases, is conversations around legality and legality and their wishes, because I think in our instance, Tony is my power of attorney. So if there ever had to be decisions to be made, I know, he knows, our friends and family knows that I've given him that authority. We've had those discussions. I know that he would always do what I was hoping would be done with me, because that's how they cure diseases, and that's an exciting prospect for somebody living with a chronic disease. The second thing is that after I had double pneumonia twice. They thought that that would be it then. I would just keep getting it because of the damage done. And that it would just be, chest infections and everything. By blessings and miracles, because that's what it is, I had it twice, and yes, I have had sepsis, but sorry, brain fog. Really bad brain fog. Oh, because we've had those conversations, everything's in place. And I honestly thought that with my medical history, there would be absolutely no chance in me getting any sort of life insurance policy like that would ever be able to be a thing. So out there, never going to happen. How do we make it happen? And I actually went on to poly.co.uk, put in all of our details, and I now have a life insurance policy. And if I'm correct, it's for it's like £20,000 a year, I believe, because Tony and I sat down and had a conversation, and I said to him, if anything ever did happen to me, I wouldn't want you to have to go straight back to work. I would want you to still to be a really emotionally available parent. And the idea of him then going through that and how awful that would be, and then that she was going to have to start doing before and after school clubs and stuff like that just made me feel so horrendous. So that's something we have in place, and it's like about £22 a month, which is nothing, absolutely nothing for what it is and what it's going to give my family if the worst should ever happen. The third and final thing that I'm just going to mention really, really briefly is, two things. And they're probably going to sound so stupid to everybody else. But when I've been very poorly, I've made sure that people know what I would like at my funeral. And that's a horrible thought. And but I think nowadays especially, we all have really personal ideas of what we want to do for our friends and family, and that was my thing. So that's, like I say, just a tiny little comment on that, because we don't want to focus on that. But then again, it's therapeutic, so actually we do. Those are conversations that are had in the community and within families in the community, so actually we should absolutely talk about those things. Definitely. Sorry, I take that back. The final thing is that I've looked really extensively into donating my body when I die, and everyone who I feel like needs to know knows that. And I think it's done. It's so important for me that we find a breakthrough, we get that cure. And the only way that cures and things like that are made is by experimentation and stuff like that. So the idea of being able to give that back to my disease and people that I love who suffer with the disease, that's a really important thing to me. So there you go, that's everything. Quick little 14-minute video. I am terribly, horribly, enormously fatigued and dehydrated at the moment, but really it's just like water coming out of my bag. So much more is coming out of me, including urine, because I self-catheterise. Can't remember if I've spoken about that before, but I self-catheterise, so we can keep an eye on my urine input and output, or not input. Well, yeah, I suppose input. Anyway, but yeah, so it's difficult because sometimes I think you feel in yourself that it's got to an extreme where you should be in hospital, and yet you know the worst place for you to be is in hospital, and how vulnerable that leaves people and how difficult that is for people, because it means we have very vulnerable people living in our communities that need far more support than they're currently getting, and it's putting people in dangerous positions who should not be being put in dangerous positions, if that makes sense. Okay, I love you all very deeply, very dearly. I will upload this now. Sorry, I have to excuse just everything that's going on. Oh, bless. It was so sweet of people. I put a picture of me in some new pyjamas. They're mint green and dinosaurs. They're awesome. And everybody was so flipping sweet about it. And I literally didn't have the heart to be like, they're age 11. I just didn't, they're age 11. But they're so freaking cool. Look, would you not want to wear these pyjamas? I'm just saying, alright? I'm just saying. Hang on. We've got to go the full hog now, look. Look at that. Yes. Tell me you wouldn't. Tell me you wouldn't.